Welcome to Comptroller's Corner. I'm your host, Pat Curry, joined as always by Buffalo Comptroller Mark Schroeder. Our top story today, the Comptroller has unveiled a plan to implement a continuous auditing function at the Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority, which would be conducted by an outside, independent, and objective firm of certified public accountants. After selecting a qualified CPA firm through a public bidding process, the outside auditors will identify the areas of highest risk and conduct 2 to 3 targeted audits per year. Now, Mark, many public entities hire a CPA firm to help them with their internal auditing functions. It's a cost-effective approach because it's year-round, but it's not necessarily full-time, and you have the benefit of having a highly qualified, independent set of eyes looking at these books. But the best part about it is the independence of this group, because they're not answering to or they're not employed by the agency that they're auditing.
Yeah, it's a common practice. In the Comptroller's office, we've implemented that common practice over the years. Even before I got there, it would be common for the Comptroller to go through a RFP, request for a proposal, to find an outside CPA firm to help the accounting division close the books. It's common. We do it. It's done universally. What we're calling for here is very much the same thing. The B.M.H.A. has been under fire for decades, and so enough is enough. And so we're almost there now, Patrick. I'm feeling very confident. Based on the surroundings, there have been article after article, editorial after editorial, agreeing with the Comptroller's office and with the council president that we really need to get to work on the B.M.H.A. and do a comprehensive internal function audit, along with some other things as well. So I would encourage, the viewers, especially if you have a relationship with your council members or your mayor, to give them a phone call or to call their staff and just to say, please, enough is enough. We need to do this audit. And so I'm very confident that we're headed in the right direction.
Now, the BMHA have said they need time to fix this, but let's be clear here. The BMHA is not going to fix this problem on their own. They've had plenty of time to fix these issues. It's really time for you and the other elected officials in the city to be accountable to the public and make this agency accountable to the public and the public housing residents that rely on this agency to have a place to live.
Yeah, so I'm very confident that the way that we've structured this, we have volunteered, Audit and Control, our city auditor and our management team, we have volunteered to initiate the RFP, request for proposal process. We've done this time after time after time. We can identify the most credentialed CPA firm out there who has experience in doing this with municipal housing. And so I'm confident that that is going to be the case. And so you mentioned this in the beginning, Patrick. The most important thing, once we get agreement, from the policymakers, the mayor and the council members, and who's going to pay for it? Is it going to be the B.M.H.A. or is it going to be the city of Buffalo? Once we get through that, the most important thing you said in the beginning was that when you get these professional independent auditors in there, what they're gonna do is they're gonna perform a risk assessment. They're gonna be looking at all sorts of different categories within the BMHA, and then they're gonna prioritize what has to be done first. And I'm encouraged by this because I know the results are gonna be beneficial to the tenants and also to the citizens of Buffalo who have a responsibility for the most vulnerable within our community, because it's their tax dollars that underwrites these facilities. And if you look at these facilities right now, it's a disgrace. There are people who are living in squalor. There are people who, if you go to the 13th floor, you can smell the sewer from the basement because of the attention that the Comptroller's office has received with the articles, independent third-party articles, and the media reports a retired, disabled veteran from Frederick Douglass Towers called me the other day, and he was limited in his conversation because he just recently had a stroke. So his caretaker got on the phone and explained to me the horror. What's happening to this man, a veteran, what's happening to him and how he's disrespected in their system, and that he's also put a claim in for a human rights violation. These are the types of things that are happening in the 29 different developments. And if there is Big Brother coming in, like we want to do with the Comptroller's Office and do this audit, it's going to tame them. It's going to tame that management team at B.M.H.A. They're going to be looking over their shoulder a little bit right now. You think they're looking over their shoulder, Patrick, when they signed up Friends and Family program and they gave some friend a $500,000 contract and they're out there buying faucets for $62? Do you think they think anybody's looking over their shoulders?
Currently, there's nobody looking over their shoulders because they haven't had an internal auditor at their organization in over 6 years. Now, the time is now, no time to squabble about who's going to pay for what, because at the end of the day, this is going to result in a lot of boosting of the revenue at the BMHA and also curbing expenses. We're going to cut costs by having more control over purchasing and payroll and other areas like that, where this firm, and you've taken this risk-based approach in your city audits, and this would take that approach to the BMHA and find out where's the BMHA most vulnerable, and are there ways that we can target those areas. And at the end of the day, every time these audits are done, it also always boosts revenue and decreases expenditures, and that means more money for public housing residents and more money to be invested in giving them a more dignified place to live.
No question. Our motto has been all along transparency. So what we want to do, Patrick, is we want to put it all out there. And one of the things that you said to me last week when you were talking with the congressman's office, who also called for an audit through the IG, the federal audit, you had said to me that there are times where the federal government will fine or hold back monies to the authority if they're not doing A, B, C, and D. What we're doing is we're making it very clear, ongoing from here on in, just not one time, forevermore. We are going to be looking and making sure we're implementing over there a internal audit function. And so this way they won't be at risk. The Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority will not be at risk for future admonishment from the government or grants saying, no, we can't give you the money because you're not doing this right. We're going to have it all out there and everybody's going to know it.
And once this initial setup is complete, it'll be easier and more cost effective, and then you can bring in some of your own auditors to supplement this outside auditing firm. But you think it's very important to get this process started right away, because they've already been operating without this important oversight for so long. This is not time to be waiting around. We're starting from scratch, so we need to hit the ground running with the BMHA, and it's desperately needed.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable. I think there always is some resistance for when the authority, in this case the Comptroller's office, has come in and said, you really should be doing A, B, C, and D. There is sometimes resistance. To the council president's credit, he is saying the Comptroller's office is 100% right on this, and he also said, quote, he 2,000% agrees that the BMHA should underwrite, should fund this audit.
Which you agree with.
Which I absolutely agree with. And so tomorrow is a key meeting in the Buffalo Common Council Finance meeting, of which Patrick Curry, my executive assistant, represents me there, and he will be talking to the council members and asking some of their questions. But I'm expecting and anticipating that the council will do the right thing tomorrow, and that they will advance this idea of doing the audit, and they will also put in resolution form, I hope, and I hope it's 9-0 unanimous, that the BMHA has the responsibility to pay for this, and we will assist and we will do everything we can to make it painless in terms of the monetary amount of money, but this is something that has to be done.
That's one of the great things about the bidding process is you get a very low price, and you've done that before with other RFPs like that. But I do want to mention you mentioned the council's support of your idea, and even Councilman Fontana put in a resolution calling out the purchasing practices of the B.M.H.A. So if the council and you and the B.M.H.A. or I'm sorry, the council and you say the B.M.H.A. should pay for this, but it's needed. The one who has the most influence over the B.M.H.A., the mayor, has not gotten on board with your proposal yet, but you're hoping that he sees the light and that he encourages the board members, the majority of which he appoints, to see the value of this audit and how this could actually be cost effective for the agency.
No question about it. And sometimes elected officials, they're motivated by what they hear in the community or what they read in the paper on Sunday. And there was an editorial in the Buffalo News this past Sunday, and it was pretty clear that even the executive director of the BMHA, which essentially was appointed, by the mayor, is suggesting strongly that many of these things need to be implemented, and that he said that they haven't had an internal auditor in there for 6 years. That's a disgrace. And so these matters need to be cleared up right away. There's no room for delay. We need to act swiftly. If the Common Council and the mayor, if they don't act swiftly, then I'm just going to have to come up with Plan B. And I got news for you, Patrick. I got Plan B, C, D, and E. This is going to get done, and the easiest and best way for it to happen is with the cooperation from the policy makers in City Hall, and that is clearly the mayor and the 9 council members.
And it would be great, especially for the request for proposal, to have the cooperation of the B.M.H.A. so we know more about their organization and have a better opportunity to set that up so that these firms could know what they're going into when they submit their proposal. But I wanted to mention, you mentioned the editorial. The editorial and you, from the Buffalo News, the editorial, and you had the similar position. Hey, yes, we think the BMHA should pay for this, but if they're not going to, because you can't force them to do it, if they're not going to, the city should pay for it because it has to get done. Yeah. And at the end of the day, it's all taxpayer money and money from people that pay rent to live there that fund this. So the elected officials are the only ones with responsibility to the public. The BMHA board does not answer to them. So it's time for elected officials to step up.
Either way here, if you think about it this way, either way, the mayor really has to weigh in here. In that if he agrees that this needs to be done, he could then use his influence to have the BMHA pay for this. And if they don't, then it's going to be with his agreement. Then we have to have the citizens of Buffalo pay for it, and the mayor also has influence on that. So either way, the mayor is going to have to weigh in. And his excuse last week that, no, we don't really need to do this because the federal government is doing an audit is really not true. It's not true only because usually the federal audit is small in scope. The last time they did one was in 2015, and it really had to do with some expenditures, $263,000, that they thought the BMHA shouldn't really be paying to an outside law firm. These things could be worked in within inside counsel. So to think that the federal government is really going to come in and do the type of audit that I'm calling for, it's not going to happen. And so, we just have to make that clear, if it isn't clear already, to the mayor.
Right. The federal government has different objectives here. They want to make sure that their federal funds are spent in a way that they would like to see. But also, there's other funds that aren't federal. There's rent from the people that live at the BMHA. And also, you mentioned these federal audits tend to be very narrow in scope. They're not ongoing and continuous. They're one-time audits, not ongoing and continuous like your proposal is. And the federal audit is done. It could be released as early as this week. So now's the time really for the BMHA to get its house in order, and they need this outside set of eyes to look at things. And this is not a novel idea. You've actually done this in other areas. The street lights in the city of Buffalo, costs up to $16 million a year for the streetlights and the electricity in city buildings. Now, you thought at the time that the city wasn't getting everything they were paying for. You brought in an outside firm. You did an RFP, a public bidding process, which these firms slashed their prices in order to compete with each other. You found a firm to do it, and it ended up getting $1 million refund from National Grid. So that's a real dollars and cents on the city's bottom line that this audit has done. So really the takeaway is these audits don't really cost money. They save money, and they bring in money, and they're sorely needed at this agency, especially an agency with a $40 million budget.
No question about it. And get this just briefly, one of the areas in terms of the risk assessment will be the procurement. And do they have procurement policy? I would say they don't, based on what we know they've done over the last year or so, right? And so when the audit is done, they will identify that there really are not any procedures in place, that they don't understand, or they're not adhering to doing an RFP or doing this or doing that. Then what happens is the audit will then give a series of recommendations on each of the areas. That's when the Comptroller's office and the city auditor really come in, because we are going to be looking at this and looking at the timelines prescribed. When should they be doing this? And we're going to ring the bell if they're not doing it. I pop up these things, as you know, Patrick, I'm always popping things up, because if you say you're going to do something on this date, I'm popping it up on that date, and I'm asking the question. And sometimes I'll be reasonable if there's a reason to why there's a delay. But I am not going to be reasonable, and I am not going to be happy if it was ignored. And that is not going to happen as long as I'm the controller of the city.
Well, Mark, we got to take a brief break. When we come back, I want to talk about capital projects for the city.
Okay, thanks, Pat.
Stay tuned for more Comptroller's Corner after this message. Comptroller's Corner. The Comptroller has implemented a new debt policy that will restrict spending of capital proceeds on non-capital projects. Now, Mark, this will allow the city to invest more capital funds on actual capital projects. In previous years, capital funds have been devoted to things like demolitions and tree removal. These things are not building anything. These aren't roads or buildings or bridges that are true capital expenses. These are areas where the city has a yearly expense in this area, whether it's maintenance or a repair or demos, and they shifted the burden onto capital expenses. Well, the problem with that is when you borrow money for capital expenses, you pay interest on that. So this is essentially what they have been doing, is like paying your utility bills with a credit card, incurring interest expense on something that you know you're going to pay every year, year in and year out, when you don't really need to incur that interest expense. And you've told them repeatedly over the years to include this in their operational budget where it belongs. Your bond counsel has told you to tell them. Your outside auditor and CPA firm has told you that. And even the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority, which is the control board, has advised to stop spending capital money on non-capital expenses. Now, this year is the first year your new debt policy will be in effect during this capital project policy. And now the good news is that the money that would be devoted to these non-capital expenses is going to be going towards more capital improvements, and you can see that in roads, bridges, and buildings in the city of Buffalo, which desperately needed.
No doubt. The debt policy gives us teeth, the teeth that we've needed. Now listen, I've been in government for some time. I was a member of the New York State Assembly, and I understand governors doing this. Not only this mayor, but previous mayors, going back to Mayor Jimmy Griffin. They've always tried to take advantage of doing whatever they can. And so when I first became the controller, I recognized that this really isn't the best practice, isn't best practices. But I talked to them, I explained to them that at some point in time, you're going to have to make sure you shift, in that the demos, the tree trimming and plantings, they have to go in an operational budget, not in the capital plan. And so, but they listened, half listened, right? But over the last 5 years, we have worked very hard in developing this debt policy manual. and I give Greg Szymanski, and also who's the debt management officer, and Forty Sherino, my first deputy. I give them a lot of credit for doing all of the work. But then, the most important thing that took place after we put the work in it, the contents, we went to the mayor's office, we went to the administration, we went to the council, we went to every single department, we went to the CPC, the Citizens Planning Council, and we said, listen.
Even the Buffalo Fiscal Stability Authority, you went to the control board.
Everybody, and we said, hey, listen, we do not want the city of Buffalo to be in a vulnerable position because bond counsel and others who are going to be grading us are going to suggest that we're doing something that isn't best practices. So we have to stop it. And I'm now implementing it because it's in the policy that everybody has agreed to. They've all agreed to it. And so it's hard. It's hard doing something new. But I'm going to, based on what I know, I'm going to give the administration and the council credit that they're going to adhere to this policy that they've agreed to, and I'm not going to waver now. This is implemented.
Right. You mentioned you shared it with all of these entities, the mayor, the council, the CPC, the BFSA, and you've asked their feedback. Some did provide some quality feedback.
And we implemented
that into the plan. And in crafting the plan, you also talked to your bond counsel, your the certified public accountants that do your books. You also talk to your financial advisor, and you look to the Government Finance Officers Association. That's a governing body of all government finance officers in the entire North America. And you also look to the State Comptroller's Office for guidance on this.
Right.
So it was a really all-encompassing document in this debt policy, and it was approved by the council in a unanimous vote, and it is the policy of the city of Buffalo at this point.
Yep. So it's something that is going to take place, and I'm very proud of my office, for coming up with this initiative.
Now, this, by not using capital funds for non-capital expenses, that's going to free up a lot of money that we're paying in interest costs and debt service. That's going to free it up to help the city with some cash flow issues. Now, which brings us to our next topic. Now, you have been filing now with the council since the new fiscal year started cash flow reports. Now, this is going to be a monthly thing that you will file with the council because it's getting tight. We're in a situation now where the city's cash flow is so strained that even with commingling or pooling the money together with the Buffalo School Board, we could come up short later this calendar year, and it could lead to some revenue anticipation notes, which essentially is short-term borrowing, basically borrowing money just to pay the bills, get through a few months. And now that is something you don't want to do, but that's why you're filing these cash flow projections every month with the council, so that the council administration sees where we're at and that you can make a decision on borrowing with the input needed from the administration on what cash is coming in, what cash is going out, and with the support of the council, who has their eye on this. They're very concerned about the cash flow situation.
The citizens of Buffalo elected me to be the fiscal officer, and so our fiscal year starts July 1st. But 6 months previous to July 1st, going back to December, I understood that the city of Buffalo had a cash flow problem. And so I worked with my debt management officer to communicate with the Commissioner of Finance, and then I communicated directly, weekly, to the mayor of the city of Buffalo, 26 weeks in a row, because everybody needs to know we have a negative cash flow on the city side. And not only did it happen for 6 months previous, but now the fiscal year started in July and goes till next June 2019. Patrick, we're going to be in a negative situation all the way through. So that means we have to make important decisions along the way. The one thing I don't want to do is I don't want to have to borrow money just to pay normal bills. I don't want to do that. So that would be called a RAN, a revenue anticipation note. That would cost a lot of money to the taxpayers of Buffalo if we were to go out and borrow $60 million.
Could be several $100,000.
It could cost us $76,000 a month times 6 months. It's $500,000. I don't want to do it. So I want to do everything possible, and that's why I need full cooperation. And that's why I need full cooperation from the mayor and the administration, from the Common Council. I often ask for some advice from the Office of the State Comptroller, and we're just trying to do everything, and the Bond Council, we're just trying to do everything we can to make sure that we keep this thing under control.
Now, Mark, we just got a minute left.
Yeah.
You've been out and about in the community. It was
Yeah.
Labor Day
Yeah.
this past weekend. Tell us a little
Labor
bit
Day
about
was great, and the Labor Day parade is held in South Buffalo, which I think is appropriate because the union movement actually started in South Buffalo on the south side in the old First Ward for the dock workers back in the 1820s, and then it was Grover Cleveland, a Buffalonian mayor, governor, and then president, who actually enacted the Labor Day national holiday. And so it was a beautiful, glorious, hot day in Buffalo and in South Buffalo in particular. This past weekend, I was the graduation speaker at the Alden Correctional Facility. 22 inmates graduated and on their way to a second chance, thanks to Beverly Newkirk of It Takes a Village. So I'm busy out there, and I'm very proud of our community.
Well, Mark, we're out of time. Thanks for joining us in Comptroller's Corner.
You're welcome.
And thanks for joining us at home. Make sure to check out the Comptroller's Facebook page, our Twitter handle, our YouTube page, and our city website. For Mark Schroeder, this is Pat Curry, signing off.